CIA, how many kids have you killed today? Harvard, Obama, CIA, how many kids have you killed today?
These killings by our government, by the United States government and its allies in NATO, have been rendered 100% invisible to the American public. And the American public is allowing this to be done in its name. Today, we are making the victims 100% visible.
I can tell you about this drone victim if anyone wants to know the story of this particular young man was killed in a drone strike in Pakistan just 3 days after meeting with lawyers, international law experts, and journalists from the United States and England. In Pakistan, they met with some Pakistani human rights lawyers about the need to document drone strikes and to be able to connect debris from the strike to their deaths, to be able to bring suits and to make the clear connection that a certain victim was killed by a certain drone strike. This young man was learning photojournalism and had agreed to do some of that documentation gathering, and 3 days later he was killed in a drone strike. And you can see interviews with people who had just met with him, who had testified to the fact that he was not a terrorist, not engaged in any activity more radical than trying to document drone strikes and make a clear connection between victims and cause.
What Sugar said?
Tariq Aziz.
What do you think of NATO?
I got a problem. I have a total difference between NATO and me. I was in the military, so I have a total different opinion of NATO than most people do.
What is it?
I mean, I think NATO's a bunch of asses. I think NATO does a lot of good things. I'm not going to say they don't because I've seen it personally in Afghanistan and Iraq. But they also do a lot of bad things. I don't believe that they should have policies that saying if one country goes to war, we all have to go. I think that policy is just wrong. I think there's a lot of reform that NATO could do. I mean, they do feed people. They do bring out meals. They do feed people in the streets in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I've seen it firsthand. But they still do a lot of things that are just messed up too. There's a lot of troops that don't like NATO because we go into a city in Afghanistan, and NATO had been there before we had got there, and then the people would start yelling at us because of what NATO did to them people.
That's crazy.
It's the same thing with Blackwater. The same thing with Blackwater. The same thing with any of the private organization armies and the total big armies. They would come into a city. Like I was doing recon, and I would go into a city, and they wouldn't say anything to it, and they'd be like, "Forget y'all," and blah 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 blah, and they start cussing us out and all sorts of things. And we'd be like, "Whoa, we just got here. What happened?" And then that happened. And then my job, since I'm Islamic, was to go in there and talk to the people about what they were doing. And I would be like, okay, what did y'all do? And what happened? And then they tell me what happened. And I'd be like, okay, we ain't going to do that. We ain't going to take people out of it. NATO would take people out of their houses. So would Blackwater take people out of their houses and go arrest them for no reason. And waterboard these people and do all sorts of crazy things to these people. And we wouldn't. And we'd be like, for real? We didn't even know what happened. We didn't know that was your brother or your dad or your mom or something. We didn't know what was going on. So it's putting a lot of... It put a lot of heat on the troops. It put a lot of heat on the troops before we even got to a city, which we were just coming in there to try to help out and help them, try to protect them from the other groups that would come in and try to mess with them. We would go there to protect them, and we'd have all these other organizations that came in before us and start yelling at these people and get yelled at and bitched at.
It's a pity that less than 1% of the 1% are actually protesting. Okay? It's a pity. It's a sinful shame.
I know.
Okay? Guys, people need to get out of the churches and start protesting.